I have a story to tell. Yesterday was Wednesday, and after having skipped a week because of the brutal cold here on the farm and the animals, I went to Roaring Spring, which is my normal thing. Wednesday, I go there in the afternoon. And this time, I decided I had a mission, several, but I decided I was going to try to find somebody over there who spoke Pennsylvania Dutch and English, and would be willing to, I thought, come some public place like, I don't know, the library or Danny Kaye's Cafe, and sit with me for an hour a week. I suggested $25 an hour. I'd pay for their time, and they wouldn't have to teach me. All they would have to do is answer questions that I have about the language, like how do you say, how are you? Wie bist du? I know that now. So I determined there had to be somebody over there. So when I went over the mountain, I stopped at a little store called Flitch's grocery store, I think it is. You can't even really tell it's a store except there's a sign out in front of it. And you go in and it's part of a garage, but it's a store, and I've been curious about it, and I decided, well, because you see there's about 5 miles that has a sign that says beware of horse and buggies, because it's a Mennonite, old order Mennonite, horse and buggy Mennonite area. Well, not completely, they use tractors, but steel wheeled tractors, no rubber tires. So I decided, well, I'll just stop and I'll go in there and I'll ask, is there anybody here who qualifies and would be willing? Because I go by there every day or every Wednesday, and I'd stop. And so I go, and here Wednesday they're closed. So I drew a blank. Apparently the family leaves and goes somewhere on Wednesday, and I thought, oh man, oh well. So I got back in the car and I headed on. And I passed several opportunities that I was thinking about later. There's a harness maker that I've been in there, and there's a sewing machine repairman that I haven't been to, but the harness maker's place I have been. I could go there, but I didn't. I decided instead to go to the man who sharpens tools. What is his name? I think his name's Mervyn, probably Zimmerman. But I have his phone number and all that, and I thought, well, I can ask him. He probably would be able to help if he's around. Well, I pulled in, and the shop he keeps the shop closed. He's a dairy farmer, and I drove around up there, and everything was all neat and cleaned up and stuff, but there was nobody in sight. I thought about, no, I even walked around the house to the one door. I didn't knock on the door because I thought, they're going to see me if they're there. And I thought, no, they're not there. So I got back in the car and I went on. I was determined. I was going to find a way. There had to be somebody. In Roaring Spring was what I'd been hoping for, but this would have been fine. So then I stopped at a place that sells raw milk. I've been wanting to go there too. That's not I mean, that's not just whole milk, it's raw milk. It's not pasteurized. And I think one time, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I bought some raw milk there. And I sort of did the same. I drove around the barn back in there, and it was I couldn't see anybody around. Now this was at about 1:30, and I thought, well, maybe I don't know. But anyway, I went down and I parked the car, and I thought, well, I'll go in and see what the deal is on buying some raw milk. And as I was heading in, there was a tall, thin young man came walking by up toward the barn, and I spoke to him. And he had an accent, and which was great, and he was a little uncomfortable with the conversation. I think it's partly because he was uncomfortable with English, but his English was fine. And I explained it to him, and he didn't volunteer. I didn't ask him directly because he looked like he was a farmer, and the farmers are busy all the time, really. But he said, I asked him if he knew anybody, and he said, well, he'd ask some people, and a woman went by, a young woman, also heading up to the barn. And I said, now she, for example, she would do anybody, old, young, man, woman, and I explained I'd pay, and so then I went in and that was the most. Oh no, and I also asked if there was a bed and breakfast somewhere in that area because I'd seen it on maps that there was one. He said yeah, and he gave me instructions how to get there. I figured, well, that's another place I could stop and find out about. And I bought some raw milk, a gallon, $4 of raw milk, and that'll be a regular purchase for me probably now. So I drove on, and then I headed down, according to his directions, down, let's see, it was Snyder Creek Road, and then that comes to Potter Creek Road, and right opposite was the private road that went up to the bed and breakfast. But by this time it was taking time, and I thought I'll just head on to Roaring Spring, drawing a blank everywhere, and I thought about, well, there were other opportunities. There's a nursery, tree nursery, that I could have stopped there. I knew they were Mennonites, and I thought, well, maybe I'll stop on the way back. And I was going through my where else, like the Sawyer, where I buy lumber. He lives in a different part of the cove, and it's not really quite on the way, but he speaks Dutch. Now I say Dutch, it's Pennsylvania Dutch, it's not Dutch from Netherlands. He speaks Dutch, and he might know somebody, because there's actually a store there, Zimmerman's Bulk Groceries, and I mean, they speak, I hadn't thought of them because they were kind of out of the way. I was trying to find somebody close to Roaring Spring to make it easy. But I drew blanks everywhere. And when I got into Roaring Spring, I stopped at my sister's, my youngest sister's. I don't stop there every week, but I wanted to stop there today. And I spoke to her, and I know this isn't much of a story yet, but she said the woman that had worked for my mother, her name was Frances, she would have been perfect because she spoke Pennsylvania Dutch and English, and she would have just done fine. And she had, but the thing is, they had to go drive to get her, and she cleaned house, I think, for my mother, and then take her back when she was done, because they didn't have cars and drive that far. I don't know how my mom got to meet her, but anyway, she was a possibility. And I talked to Barbie, and Barbie said, well, she just didn't know. Right there in Roaring Spring, there weren't very many Mennonites that she knew. And so, she'd think about it, and, so still drawing blanks. And, I think that's going to be part one of this story, because I don't want to be rushed with what's coming. Bye for now.